We seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
The leader of the opposition, you have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style, and so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
It's a very interesting question.
The Bubb Report with Dr. Kellon Bubb. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Off the bat, let me just say that, unfortunately, this week's program is not live, so we will not be able to take your live questions and comments during the stream. And part of this is because, of course, it's final season for me. And as a professor, I have the honorable task of grading my students' work after administering finals. And so that is what has been taking up a lot of my time. So unfortunately, I will not be in a position to air the program live this week. However, our commitment is that irrespective of whatever scheduling challenges I may have or may confront, that we intend to have a program on air. Of course, this will be our last program for the year. Of course, the next program next week will be a year in review of sorts, where we will review some of the most notable moments coming out of programming from the Bubb Report this year. So stay tuned for that next week. But next week, it will just be a year in review. We intend to resume our programming on Sunday, the 4th of January. Sunday, the 4th of January will be our first program for 2026. However, as we close out yet another year, I want to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you, including our loyal viewers and listeners, as well as our subject matter experts of the Bubb Report. Of course, without your support and engagement and feedback, which has been the driving force of everything we do, the Bubb Report will not be the quality program that it has turned out to be in our 5th year. Of course, this is a very big year for this program as well. We held our inaugural Future Forge Summit in Grenada that was headlined by Dr. Didicus Jules, who is the Director General of the O.E.C.S. Secretariat in St. Lucia. He was our marquee speaker down there at the Grenada Trade Center. So we want to thank Dr. Jules for, again, his support of this platform, and for members of the national community who attended our inaugural event that we intend to make an annual event, whether we're having it in Grenada or whether we're going to be having it here in the diaspora, where there is a very vibrant Grenadian community. And so our commitment to you is that public education mandate that we set ourselves up to be doing is what we will continue to do. Of course, this year has been filled with meaningful conversations, thought-provoking discussions, and moments that challenge us to think differently. Now, none of this would have been possible without your commitment to tuning in, sharing your perspectives, and spreading the word about our mission here on the program. Now, whether you've been with us since the beginning, following the commencement of this program after the untimely death of one of my mentors, the late, great George Grant, or whether you've just joined the community, you are an essential part of this journey here on the Bubb Report. Your time is valuable, especially on a Sunday morning. We have many of you, moms and dads, who are either busy in the kitchen cooking, as some of you probably are now, or there are some of you who are doing chores around the house. I met a brother in Grenada, and he says, yeah, whenever he goes to his land on a Sunday, to do some work with his kitchen garden and so on, that he has the Bubb Report in the background listening. So those of you who might not be leaving comments in the comment section, while we welcome that is an important part of engagement for the program, we also appreciate those of you moms, dads, uncles, aunties, and so on, who watch the program while you're doing your chores on Sunday morning. And again, let me also apologize to those of you who I know who have met me to say that you missed church because the program was so intriguing and so interesting that you could not go to church. So forgive me for not allowing you to have engagement on Sunday morning, that spiritual engagement that you so need and so appreciate. But we do appreciate you as well for that. And the fact that you chose to spend that Sunday morning with us means more than words can express. Now, as we look ahead to 2026, I personally reaffirm my commitment to balanced and fearless journalism reporting that seeks truth, that embraces diverse perspective, and never shies away from asking the tough questions. As I've said before, I will remain unbought and unbossed by anyone. Okay? Now, our goal remains to inform, inspire, and empower you with integrity and courage. Now, from the entire team at the Bubb Report, we have the small but the mighty two-person team on my production team. I thank you for making this year unforgettable. And here's to continued growth, connection, and new opportunities in the year ahead. Folks, stay tuned, stay engaged. And as always, thank you for being a member of the Bubb Report family. And Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all of you at this time. Viewers and listeners, what we want to do now is to take our first break and come back with our first conversation, the first segment of this week's Bubb Report. Please stand by for that. We want to hear from you. What are your most cherished holiday memories? Or even better still, what are some holiday traditions that you still carry on today? I mean, growing up in Primrose or even in Four Roads, the tradition was to bake the bread and cake. And of course, you also had to do a deep clean of the house. You had to change your curtains. You had to vanish and polish the living room chairs. You had to sweep the floor, sweep the house completely from top to bottom. You had to clean your windows. I mean, it was just one deep cleaning session at this time of year. But of course, the reward was a wonderful Christmas meal, whether that was your ham, your bread and ham in the morning. Of course, the salt ham is what we're talking about now. The ham that you soaked in in that bucket, and you always wash it with lime, and you replace the water there. That was a tradition that we carried on. You make your ginger beer. Of course, you have your sorrel. You put your little rum in the sorrel. Then, of course, the black cake. And you remember you soak the prunes in that black cake. Before you actually put it in the oven, you soak the prunes. You soak it in alcohol before you put it in the oven. So those are some things that I remember growing up as some Christmas traditions that we carried on. Of course, in Primrose, my deceased great grand aunt, who I knew, Eva Duncan of blessed memory, she had a mud oven in Primrose. For those who know it, Myra Fisher might know it. Of course, Myra is 101 years old now, Happy birthday, Cousin Myra. But that mud oven was essentially the place where, folks would come and bake their bread, bake their cake in anticipation of the holidays, in anticipation of having visitors over and so on. So that's the Christmas I remember. It was a time of sharing. It was a time of giving. And it was not necessarily a time of great materialism. There was not this pressure to buy gifts and so on. Although, the gifts and the toys were there, but really it was about sharing what you handcrafted at home, right? That is the Christmas I remember. But of course, what I want to do now, folks, is to get to our first interview or first guest for this week's edition of the Bubb Report. No stranger to the program, Sister Daisy Hazard. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you. Sorry for getting you out at this time of year. I know that you're probably busy preparing for the holidays as well. But I have to say, you do look festive in your red there. We both wearing red. No coincidence. Just coincidental, I would say. Coincidental, really. But welcome.
Christmas,
Yes.
and it's Christmas, and I dressed especially for the show. Okay, so I pulled out my red dress.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, I think December 2024, just around this time, I was also doing a program with you and Mr. Jimmy Bristol.
Bristol, yes.
Casey, Jimmy Bristol. I was wearing red as well.
So red seems to be one of your favorite primary colors there. So how are preparations going for the holidays? In spite of all the work that your union has you doing.
I have been complaining and groaning because I love Christmas. I love the preparation. I usually start in November and I've not been able to touch a thing. I have the ham. I've done that for sure. But because of all the union work, the exhausting work that we've been confronted with, and unseasonably so, I've really not been able to do as much. But I love Christmas. Last night at 2:00, I was putting out my both Christmas trees. I was putting them out. Yes.
Yeah, but that's good. Historically, though, I remember when there was that major strike. I can't believe it might have been in 1998, 1999 with Tawu, where I think there was a major industrial, but it was around Christmas time as well. And at that time they went to President General at the time, Chester Humphrey's house, and people pelted his house with the spoiled meat and so on. I remember that Christmas.
No, I remember that, yes.
I remember that. That was something that was back in the day. But this is not as serious as this. But I do want you to get into it here, Ms. Hazard, on the question of the TAMCC impasse. But I want our viewers to get context to this conversation. And I am going to play a clip with a report from the Grenada Broadcasting Network that was aired on their network that might have been back in September of 2022, because I think that gives us context to the conversation that we're about to get into. So here is that.
Protest action taken by some employees at the T.A. Marisho Community College demonstrating for outstanding increments. Education Minister David Andrews says they are now in a better place. During Tuesday's press brief, he says they have met with various stakeholders involved and have arrived at a resolution for some of the issues employees face, and payments will be made.
So to date, council is in place. We have had a resolution passed by council. In essence, staff and the unions agreeing to return to work and end the impasse upon government's commitment, which we have already made, to pay the close to $3.185 million towards the payment of outstanding fees and increases. Now, there are outstanding arrears, back payment, and there are increases. And so that has to be leveraged against both. Now, when all's put together, it's a significant figure, but we are willing to advance that much, and the unions have agreed that they are prepared to accept this while we deal with some of the other more protracted, long-standing issues related to TAMCC.
Government is also currently assessing the amount due in retroactive payments and how it can be paid soonest. Minister Andrews says that protesting workers represented by the Grenada Union of Teachers and the Public Workers Union are back to work while discussions continue for other outstanding payments.
Members of the represented by the Grenada Union of Teachers have gone back to work. So we are quite pleased to report that. There are one or two other things related to a commitment from government as to a timeline for the payment of the retroactive sections. We'll be quite happy to do that once we have verified figures as to what those are, and then we can determine a timeline for payment even in tranches. But given where we were, I'm quite happy to report that.
The arrangements between government and TAMCC stakeholders were first disclosed by President of the Grenada Union of Teachers, Jude Bartholomew, and President of the Public Workers Union, Brian Grimes.
And Mr. Zad, we're going to stop this recording here, this report again by the Grenada Broadcasting Network's Chrislina John. That was back in 2022. So therefore, Ms. Hazard, that brings me to my confusion on this issue, because based on this report, there ought to have been a pathway towards resolution, but also resolving the outstanding matters, as the Minister of Education articulated here. Explain to us, therefore, why there was need for further industrial action by the unions.
Well, perhaps the question in terms of explaining might have been best posed to the Minister for Education, because the present imbroglio has been caused not by the unions, but by the very deliberate actions of government and the council. There is no reason why in December of 2025, we should be explaining another industrial action and another impasse at TAMCC. There's no good reason for it. And it's unfortunate that events had to collude to bring us back to in another time when we can see those scenes on the roundabout at Tantine, close to TAMCC, with workers and union taking industrial action. So what happened is that the saga can date back to 2019, when the then administration cleared up almost 10 years of outstanding payments owed to workers to the tune of $21.5 million or thereabouts in 2019. Some was owed, and commitment was made to pay them into 2022. So when the present minister came in and took up office as Minister for Education, and it's worthwhile to note that he's the same Minister for Education now in 2025, that hasn't changed. It's also worthwhile to note that the chair of the TAMCC back in 2022 has not changed also. So the chair and the minister who were there in 2022 when there was industrial action and an impasse are still sitting at the helm of TAMCC as chair, that's Dr. Wendy Grenade, and as minister, that's Dr. Honorable David Andrew. So what has happened is that in 2024, government decided that it just would not honor payment for TAMCC workers for 2025. That increase had been duly established and duly negotiated for alongside public sector workers. And so TAMCC workers received their monies for 2023. They received it for 2024. And in 2024, government in its wisdom decided we are not going to pay TAMCC for 2025 according to the established agreement for 2025. We want it to be negotiated within a CBI package. And the union immediately wrote back to the college and advised that, look, there is a legal instrument that has already ratified payment for 2025 in the amount of 5%. Government cannot renege on that. It will be breaking a contract. As one lawyer said to me, it's a matter of tort. It's a contract. It's an agreement. And so government decided. And so we did a flurry of meetings. We did a flurry of letters indicating, look, you cannot. It is not possible. It is not reasonable to just decide that you're not paying for 2025. Nevertheless, they continued along the path of insisting that they would break a sealed agreement and that it should be negotiated alongside a CBA, that's a collective bargaining agreement, for the period 2026 to 28, which is a period to come. We are not yet in 26. And so we negotiate in 3-year cycles. And so 26 to 28 would be an upcoming 3-year cycle. And so the public will understand that 2025 cannot be and is not a part of that cycle, because we negotiated for that in a previous 3-year cycle, 23 to 25. Whether people agree with the mechanism, whether people agree with the protocol by which TAMCC workers have always been paid, the reality is that there should not have been, or the attempt to just not honor that agreement and to want to change it at the end or in the final year, created for some chaos and created for more than a year and a half of back and forth, of dialogue that was really not necessary, because at the end of the day, government now has to pay it. So industrial action happened, and quickly government indicated it would pay, because really government never had a leg to not pay. And so if in 2022, you had a matter of $3.185 million to consider as an outstanding amount that was owing, why would government decide of its own accord to again attempt to create outstanding amounts for TAMCC workers, which would lead back to the same industrial impasse? How can that be a good course of action for government and the council to consider? How? What set of rationales or reason, what sort of a judgment call would cause someone to believe that that's acceptable and that is something that workers and unions should be asked to do or to contend with? And we contended with it for more than a year and a half, just trying to reason with people, just trying to appeal to logic and just good basic common sense. That did not happen. And outside of that, there was another event which really precipitated the industrial action by union and workers.
And so did the government, in your conversation with them, did they offer an explanation as to why they reneged on that original position, or does that remain a mystery to you? And if they offered an explanation, what explanation did they offer?
Let me answer two ways. You said, did the government have a conversation? So I'll tell you, our experience with the present administration from 2022 to now is that they do not speak to labor. We cannot say that we have had the honor, outside of one meeting in July of 2022, I believe it was, of being able to converse with policymakers at the level of policymaking. Government has not availed itself, does not avail itself, and does not seem willing. And we can say that because it's 3 years on, they took office in 2022. And if by 2025, we are going into 2026, on no matter whatsoever, have unions been able to sit and dialogue and reason with government to advance sustainable growth and development of this country, to advance what we believe as public sector unions. And we represent a wide swath of the Grenadian households and public, where our society ought to be heading and why, where we have problems. Let's take the public sector reform pension bill. We appealed in the public space to government for conversation. That never happened. And then we saw a very flawed bill being passed. I am not able to speak on that at any length at all, because I now sit on the board of trustees to mind the business of workers. But that bill should have been something that government should have reasonably want to come to sit with public sector unions and have conversation and dialogue about, whether it's through the Minister for Labor, Minister for Social Development, whether it's Minister for Finance, whomsoever. But the advent of government and policymakers not speaking to unions in this present historical period, this is new. And in my experience as a unionist and union leader, this is very new. Because you see, it should be understood that even while in the previous administration, we had a conflict and a battlefield of the pension ground. Even on that matter, we continued to dialogue with policymakers directly. And on other matters where we needed to be able to speak directly to policymakers so that there's no translating of a message, we were able to do so. To date, the only minister of government, and I have to say that our union has ever been able to speak with directly on the table formally is the Honorable Minister Telesford. What's his first name again?
Philip Telesford.
Philip Telesford. And you remember that segment where he and I was on your program. And I have
Correct.
to give hats up and kudos to him for understanding, because outside of appearing on a program here with me, we also had meeting with him at the level of Ministry of Health with all of his senior management team. That's the only Minister for Government. And so government did advance, to go back to your question as to why they were not paying TAMCC or were not willing to pay, and why they were not willing to honor the agreement settled on at the table in on September 8th for 2026 to 28, is that they have made tuition free at TAMCC, and therefore it's a wonderful thing for the Grenadian public. And the wage bill for TAMCC necessarily has to be kept low. That the proposed increases and the agreed upon increases would inflate the wage bill too much. And so they just couldn't pay it because TAMCC tuitions is free for all students. And therefore revenue collection and revenue generation at TAMCC by the action and policy of government is not where it ought to be. The second thing is that the geopolitical wars and rumors of wars. Now, what we're seeing necessarily, we are seeing a buildup of troops in the region. So it means that, yes, we can all reasonably believe that maybe there might be something that's going to confront the world that's right here in our Caribbean region. But every year we wake up, Dr. Bubb, there's rumors of wars and wars. The war in Ukraine has been blamed for everything, very conveniently, in some instances, for the last number of years. What we're really confronting now is what might be the effects of ill-advised and reckless policy statements by our policymakers, because we have seen other Caribbean countries now who have been stripped of their access to visit and do business in the United States, and even to go to, just to have access to the United States. Does Grenada now have to pay attention to that as a consequence of what's happening and as a consequence of statements that we heard being made from our parliament? That, I think, is the more present danger and the more present concern we have to have. The third argument that was made is that cost of living in Grenada, the basket of goods that government is using, and the CPI Consumer Price Index, that team has indicated that inflation for 2026 is less than 1%. And so those three arguments came back from cabinet, directly from cabinet, I must say, through the negotiating team of TAMCC, as the reason why cabinet believed that it could not pay what was agreed on for 2026 to 28, and I suppose 2025. But let me stick here a pin.
Yes.
While TAMCC workers were being denied 5% increases for 2025, other statutory organizations that were also being paid in a normative way that TAMCC workers were being paid received their increases for 2025, no quarrel at all.
So,
and not just mainstream public sector workers, yes.
Yeah, no quarrel there. But on the question of the free tuition bit, I mean, that one has me stumped. Because were they? I'm so confused by that, because were they not anticipating that there was going to be a revenue shortfall as a result of giving relief to students, which I think is a good policy, but one has to also determine where other streams of revenue are going to be coming from, if that piece is going to be missing.
Well, I smile, because what else can we reasonably assume? If you're going to strip the college of the only source of funding that it has outside of major source of funding outside of government subvention, consequently, while you're planning and preparing for future free tuition, you must also plan and prepare for wages and salaries. And it's not enough to say TAMCC workers work for too much money, which is part of the lyrics and the extemporing that you've kind of heard. That's not reasonable, Dr. Bubb, that someone can say to you, if you decided to come home to serve today and to work at the TAMCC with your credentials and your qualification, that you ought not to be paid because tuition is free. And I want to say that ahead of the 2022 elections, persons like myself, when we got wind that this was going to be a campaign promise, and also that it was going to be a policy, we said, please, you would have to do the math. You would have to run the numbers. And we were told unofficially, yes, the math and the numbers are being done. And we have an avenue for paying these salaries and for funding TAMCC. And I'm not going to say it here on your program today. I may have to say it another time. But if I said it today in this Christmas season, it would be too inflammatory. So I'm going to hold back on that.
So where are we? Because I know that negotiations that you've met with, would it be fair to say that it's conciliation at this point?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So where are we with that? And
So
has government presented any counter proposals to the proposals that you've presented?
Right. So I'm not going to go into the substance of what has been dealt with at conciliation, dispute resolution, in the interest of fairness and also respect for the process and respect for the Labor Commissioner and her team.
Yes.
But I can speak about events leading up to that. So as we said, the 5% for 2025 is outstanding in its entirety. We expect that coming out of the processes that workers will be paid, and government quickly agreed to pay because government had no other choice but to pay. Because to not pay would mean that your college would remain under industrial siege, because there was no way that we were going to back off without having assurances that workers would receive all of the retroactive amounts owed for 2025 in their bank accounts on or before December 31st. Usually salaries for December is prepared by the 13th. You get both payments. And so we expect, as of Friday, workers had not yet received that money, but we do expect, humanly possible, that they will receive it before Christmas, and if not, before December 31st. And when the union wrote a demand letter to TAMCC, which seemed to have infuriated persons on the council, the chair of the council, that is what we had put in our ask. We respectfully demanded payment for the year 2025 by December 31st. Reasonably so, because there was no good reason why it was outstanding. There are some other matters which will come out of the findings of conciliation and out of the recommendations. And I can tell you, Brother Bob, the most I can say is, if this matter is not handled properly, we are going to have some problems. It's a very delicate matter. Rushing the action of TAMCC to shove the union into conciliation has created some unforeseen and some perhaps some conditions that persons had not sat down to carefully think out. And so what we advance is that it has to be handled properly. And so there are findings and recommendations in I guess by next week that might be made public, and we can speak on it a little bit more. But for now, all we can say today is that union took deliberate care. We took deliberate care for more than 1 year. We took deliberate care for 9 months. We took deliberate care from the time we received a letter from TAMCC saying, Cabinet has decided, has given a directive that increases for 2025 will not be paid until a CBA document is agreed upon, negotiated and agreed upon for 2025. We had signaled this is a problem. We have done all the forbearance. We have exercised all of the patience. So when in December, we finally decided enough was enough, and we gave notice to TAMCC that we would engage in industrial action, it was not because the union was hasty. It was not because the union had not gone through all of the processes that we had gone through. We minded that situation. I'm saying it again to the public. We took every care. And I want to underscore here, industrial action is a last resort. Unions and workers do not get to that easily. We do not get to that quickly unless there is something that we ought to nip in the bud. But we take every care. So once you see unions come out, we go to the media, we have interviews, we take action. It means that a situation that we've been attempting to conciliate outside of a formal conciliation process, that we've been attempting to conciliate, the other side is being unreasonable. The other side is not doing its part. And so workers and union finally just have to use every bit of arsenal or every bit of resourcing in its toolkit. And part of that resourcing is industrial action. And once we take that, we do not feel fearful about it. We do not feel embarrassed about it. We feel very bold about it, because once we do it, we know that it's something that it is well worth doing, and the cause is necessary.
Sister Zad, is there anything else you wish to add before we get to the next segment?
I want to say that the experience of the union. I've been in the union for a while. I've been in the seat of president since end of March of this year, but I've been here in the trenches. And the experience that the union is having right now in attempting to deal with public sector employees and with agents representing the government and with managers and supervisors to a large extent representing and acting on behalf of the present administration is very concerning, very unsettling. And for the very first time, I'm finding myself sometimes sleepless and doing a lot of praying because the union is confronting mischief. The union is confronting vexation and provocation to its workers. The union is confronting persons deciding, let me take away welfare packages that workers had been accustomed to for decades. We're going to take that away just because we are now the board of directors or we are a human resource committee. And a human resource committee is supposed to look out for workers, but rather than doing that, you're receiving little benefits, little welfare, little things. Let me give a stupid example, a fridge for workers who work 12-hour shifts where they cannot go outside to buy lunch or to attract a vendor, but must bring to work with them when they're leaving home, whatever meal, whatever sustenance, and the fridge breaks down and someone tells them, let your union fight for that. There's a sort of absurdity and a sort of obscenity prevailing in terms of management of workers across the public sector. We also see that a lot of administrators just do not have clear policy directive and guidance from the cabinet. Let's take the matter of statutorization. Another December, I'm speaking about statutorization here. To date, our union and the other unions who are representing public sector workers, we have not been able to receive any kind of definitive, finite information from anybody as it relates to statutorization of our workers. We have been writing the letters. We have been making the ask and the request. But if government as a policy directive has indicated to the public that statutorization will come and should have come, as a consequence of that, by now, we should have been having meat and bones discussions, finite discussions with people. And, you know, you're writing and persons are telling you, well, give me some more time because we have to ensure that we have the correct information to give you. And so there seemed to be a lack of clear policy directive, a lack of clear policy decisions by two administrators in the public sector. And we are getting those frustrating reports as well, in addition to what we are seeing. And we are appealing to government, to cabinet. Policy is critical. Policy is critical. Policy is not ad hoc. Policy is not what someone wakes up in the morning and thinks about. Policy is guided by experience. Grenada has been an independent nation since 1974. So there is nothing that we are doing now where we are inventing a wheel. We can polish it off, we can dust it off, we can improve on it. But policy ought to be guided by the practice and the experience that our nation has. And when we see policy that seems to not allow itself to reflect on the benefit of experience and knowledge, or to, and we've heard policymakers say it from the parliament, we really, the rules don't bother us. The rules are not our concern. I'm paraphrasing. We're going to go past the rules. We're going to ignore the rules if we feel that it's getting in our way. And we saw with the TAMCC matter that there was a deliberate intention to just ignore the rules and to pretend that they're not there. And that is not good. That is going to run Grenada into problems. We cannot run state and country based on how our mind tells us and what we feel and think. Even in the TAMCC scenario, I had to say to a senior person, I can't have a conversation with you on the phone to just agree. And once we have a conversation on the phone, that's an agreement for workers. We must have a formal process. The idea that we can have a conversation and that's it, that's ludicrous. And big minds are telling you those things. Mm-hmm. And so you wonder, What is informing that sort of audacity? What is informing that sort of absurdity? And I say it's Christmas, but we need to reflect on that as we go into 2026, because we need to we need to be mindful of the guardrails and to respect them, because they are there not for a party, not for an administration, not for a union, not for a bunch of workers, but for the safeguard of our country, Grenada. So,
Sisters, yes, we will be watching this space, and I trust that there will not be any demands. Your annual general meetings happen in March. Is it in March?
yes.
Every year that there will not be demands for records from the cabinet. Did you get any sense of why that occurred?
Well, again, it's a sort of, again, I say the kind of audacity and the kind of absurdity you see coming across as policy, because the attempt of any policymaker to make a policy about union dues, and there's laws. There's laws on the books, you see? And so we are very happy that that matter was resolved. And we do not foresee, we pray to God in this blessed Christmas season that we are not going to see any of that repeating itself. I believe we will not. I believe our policymakers are learning. I believe the learning curve has been sharp. I believe that the last quarter of this year, 2025, has created for higher levels of learning and understanding, and that we should all benefit from that come 2026. And that is what we are praying for, because in outside of that, the work of union is burdensome in a way that it ought not to be. And we also appealing to the policymakers. Unions are here. We speak. We can reason. We can dialogue. And our purpose is nation building. Our purpose is sustainable development of Grenada. That's our purpose. We have the same common goal as every other Grenadian, and that's to see a Grenada that's thriving and doing well. That is my role. That's the role of unions. Dr. Bubb, I want to make one plug. Allow me.
Sure.
As we enter the final stretch of Christmas, I want to appeal to the public. Let's be kind and good to each other on the road when we're driving. And let's also be kind to those people who work in the informal sector. Let's tip them a little bit. This morning I went to the gas station and it was just about 10. The sun was hot and I looked at that young lady there pumping that gas and I thought, their salaries are meager. How is she spending Christmas? Let's tip them. Let's tip persons who provide security services. And so we know that there's all the minimum wages has moved, that these people really don't get a bonus, the word bonus. Their salaries are still low. So let's tip them. Let's offer them something. If each one of us who pulls up for our gas in the next couple of days offer a little tip, it's going to be something.
And trust me, it goes a long way. You know, my grandmother always had a saying, a little is a feast, but a little also goes a long way, you know? And it does pull at people's heartstrings. So thank you for mentioning that as well. Yes. Okay. Sister Hazard, happy holidays to you and your family. And again, we will continue to watch the space on the labor front. I personally may have a bias on labor issues, having been in the trenches with labor in Grenada, organized labor by way of the Technical and Allied Workers Union, which can probably also explain the red. But as a professor, one of the things that I said to myself is that wherever post-PhD, wherever I work, it must be a union institution. And I'm so grateful that I work at a union institution where I'm part of the trenches of organization and advocacy and lobbying on behalf of my faculty colleagues. So I credit Grenada for giving me that foundation in trade unionism as well, because it is important. It is very important to have a union advocate on your behalf. And that is something I feel very strongly about. So thank you for your work. And to all the unions in Grenada, thank you for advocating on behalf of the workers of the nation.
Thank you, Dr. Bubb.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, of course, that was Ms. Daisy Hazard, the president of the Public Workers Union, almost a year into her tenure there as the president of the Public Workers Union, giving us an update on the ongoing industrial impasse there at the T.A. Marshall Community College. Of course, as Ms. Zad indicated, we should be getting an update following the conciliation talks that are currently being held and guided by the Labor Commissioner at the Ministry of Labor there in St. George's. So we'll be watching the space to see what comes out of that. Of course, the TAMCC is currently, I believe they should be on vacation already, but if not, this should be their last week wrapping up in finals and things like that. So we'll be watching the space to see what will unfold in 2026 on that front. So viewers and listeners, what we want to do now is to take a quick break and come back for the second segment of the program. Please stand by for that.
Your loved ones.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me have much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just keep quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
Viewers and listeners, welcome back, of course, to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. And of course, as we know, of course, it is the holidays. It is the Christmas season. Folks are doing their ham, their sorrels, and whatever else they're cooking up in the kitchen. I know, of course, that our viewers in the program. But in spite of the festivities and everything else, the news marches on. And that is what we do here on the Bubb Report. Treat with the matters, treat with the issues that affect the development both in Grenada and in the Caribbean. Now, on the 16th of December 2025, the administration in Washington issued a proclamation expanding U.S. travel restrictions. Effective the 1st of January 2026, both our O.E.C.S. counterparts, Dominica and Antigua and Barbuda, are now under partial travel restrictions affecting immigrants and non-immigrants seeking entry on B1 and B2, which are the business and tourism visas, the F visa, which is the student visa, the M visa, the vocational visa, and the J exchange visas, respectively. Now, additionally, consular officers at the representative embassies abroad, that's the U.S. embassies, that is, have been directed to shorten the validity of other non-immigrant visas from these O.E.C.S. territories. Now, the administration pointed to the country's citizenship by investment programs, often what the U.S. calls and what Europe calls golden passports, which let wealthy individuals acquire citizenship and, in turn, U.S. travel privileges without meeting residency requirements. Now, officials cited concerns that such programs pose screening and vetting challenges, enabling individuals to obscure true identities or origins, effectively evading existing U.S. travel restrictions. Except in the case of Grenada, we know that there are particular due diligence processes that checks on an applicant's net worth, that also does criminal background checks on the individuals who are granted citizenship by investment in Grenada. Now, Prime Minister Gaston Brown of Antigua and Barbuda expressed deep disappointment, emphasizing that his government had already implemented legislative reforms, including adding residency requirements to strengthening the vetting processes that both the European Union and the United States demanded on the previous iterations. And he also articulated that they have begun to engage in constructive engagements with their U.S. counterparts. Now, Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt called it possibly a miscommunication and said that despite extensive cooperation with U.S. agencies, his government is seeking clarification and is open to further reforms. Now, industry experts warn that the ban could severely disrupt tourism, a cornerstone of the economies of both Dominica and Antigua and Barbuda, respectively. Now, here to make sense of all of this, we have assembled a panel from both Antigua and Dominica, as well as Grenada, to have a conversation on this latest development and to ask, is this just a shot across the bow? Is this a warning shot across the bow? And should Grenada and other territories with the CBI program be on the lookout for what might be coming from Washington next? And we're happy to be joined by no stranger to the Bubb Report, Brian Samuel, who has been here before. He's a development consultant. We also have Mr. Harold Lovell, who is a former finance minister of Antigua and Barbuda, as well as, I believe, for a member of the opposition UPP in Antigua and Barbuda, as well as Dr. Thompson Fontaine, who is the political leader of the Dominica United Workers Party. Gentlemen, first and foremost, let me apologize for raining on your Christmas parade. But as I said in the intro, journalism does not stop because it's the holiday, and the issues that are coming these days very fast and furious is something that we have to treat with. So, gentlemen, welcome to the Bubb Report this week.
Good morning, everyone.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to begin with you. I want to begin with Dr. Fontaine in Dominica because, of course, this is sort of a second I guess, travel sanction against Dominica here because previously the United Kingdom issued some visa restrictions against your country there. So I want to get you to react to this latest move by Washington here, and what has been the sentiment on the ground in Dominica as a result of it.
All right, thank you very much, and indeed to my colleagues on the panel and to your listeners. Panic has actually set in Dominica because we're extremely close to the United States, familial links and business and otherwise, medical purposes. This number of at least 98 to 99% of our students seeking further education travel to the United States. So this is going to have a very profound impact on us. We are very much concerned about it, obviously. There's a larger concern as well with regards to the economy because the CBI currently brings in over 60% of government revenue. We're only able to muster 40% from our own domestic revenue collection, and 60% of government spending comes from the CBI program. This is the third country to impose that type of restriction on us. The first was Canada a few years ago, imposing visa restrictions. Then the United Kingdom, where traditionally we've never had any restrictions going into the United Kingdom. They imposed visa restrictions. Now the United States, and we are also where actually the United States and also Norway. Norway has started to turn away Dominicans or persons with Dominican passports from Norway. And now, although Norway is part of the Schengen area, where we have entry to the other countries in Europe, but the Europeans are also considering a visa ban against Dominica. Is going through the European Parliament, and there's an expectation by early next year we could be barred as well from Europe.
Mr. Lovell, what is the case in Antigua? Of course, your Prime Minister there in Antigua and Barbuda, the Honorable Gaston Brown, he's very prolific and very present on social media. We did see some updates from him with respect to conversations that they were having with Washington on this issue. But I believe the envoy, Antigua's envoy to Washington, also released a statement within the last 24 hours or so, indicating that they were able to get some measure of reprieve with respect to current visa holders that they will not be affected in the way that the initial proclamation seems to intimate. So with that context, I want to also get you to articulate the reaction of the people in Antigua to this issue.
Well, let me first of all start with the most recent update given by the Prime Minister and Antigua and Barbuda's ambassador to Washington, Sir Ron Sanders.
Yes.
Just yesterday, the Prime Minister made a statement on social media, and Sir Ron Sanders also issued a more detailed statement. But I went to the website of the State Department, and nothing has really changed. We remain on Tier 2. Haiti and other countries are on Tier 1. Antigua and Barbuda remains on Tier 2, which means that there are partial restrictions. And my reading of the initial proclamation was always that. So I'm not sure that anything has changed. He's probably clarified it because there was a feeling that Antiguans would no longer be able to travel to the United States, but with effect from the 1st of January. That was never my reading. And so I believe what was said by Sir Ronald Sanders is really consistent with where we remain, which is Tier 2, partial restrictions. Now, with respect to the first question, what was the response? Well, whilst we're disappointed at what has happened, obviously, because as everybody knows, every Caribbean person, you have either a brother, sister, auntie, uncle, neighbor, there's someone who you know that lives in the United States. Our people-to-people relations are very, very close. However, in April of this year, it was suggested that Antigua and Barbuda could face partial sanctions or restrictions. And the Prime Minister at the time, in his wisdom, he made a social media post where he said that that would never, ever happen because we're too skillful. We have such good relations that this would never happen to Antigua. So rather than address what was then a very serious matter, he chose instead to say that it could never happen. Well, they have imposed partial restrictions. But Antigua has a special twist as well, in that in last year, Antigua and Barbuda took steps whereby they seized a luxury yacht belonging to a Russian billionaire. And the daughter of the owner, she decided to take the matter to court. And so in the United States, she hired a lawyer by the name of Martin DeLuca. Now, Martin DeLuca also happens to be one of President Trump's lawyers. So it seems as though there's also a link there, whereby he, in a post that he made on social media in April of this year, he warned that there was a strong possibility that Antigua and Barbuda could face partial restrictions. And he obviously knew something that we didn't. And he said that Antigua and Barbuda would have to clear up its transparency issues, and also that the perceptions of Antigua and Barbuda's CBI program would have to be addressed. But
if I may, Mr. Lovell, just if you stick a pin there, because I believe that matter with the yacht and the Luke and so, that was litigated in a U.S. court, and rulings seem to have gone in favor of the Antigua and Barbudan government on this issue with respect to the seizing of this yacht.
No, it was never litigated. It was an application for discovery for foreign litigation. That's what it was. It was an application for discovery. And that application was filed both in the Southern District of New York and the Southern District of Florida. In New York, the court eventually ruled that they would not permit discovery. But in Florida, they did permit it. And so that matter is still a live matter. But the issue was not litigated per se. This was a preliminary application for discovery in contemplation of foreign proceedings. That's what it was.
Right,
And
yes, go ahead, please. Please finish
and
your
in
train of thought.
April, in April, the lawyer representing Yuria Guriev, the daughter of the Russian owner of the yacht, she obviously has decided that she's going to take this matter all the way. But I'm trying to make the link between the lawyer representing Yuria and the lawyer representing Donald Trump, who was rather outspoken on Facebook and made certain suggestions as to what.
I think we lost you there for a second, but in the meantime, I'll bring in Brian here to react to this. Brian, is this also a warning shot to Grenada, and not to the extent that these two CBI countries in the region have been impacted? The only two, Grenada and of course St. Kitts and Nevis, were not on the list, but those are the others that are part of that have CBI programs in place.
I wouldn't call it a warning shot so much as a warning salvo, a blast, 10 guns all across our bows and landing on us as we see. The phrase "I told you so" is one that I don't get any satisfaction from except of a grim nature. And I told everybody so years ago. We are playing with visa fire by selling our patrimony and selling our passports. Just a little story, a little anecdote. 2 years ago, I was in the queue at Heathrow, going in the foreign line, and of course everybody's shuffling. Ahead of me is a family of Russians, mommy, daddy, and 2 kids, all obviously extremely well-dressed, obviously they got a lot of money, their suitcases all matching and so on and so forth, and they're chatting in Russian ahead of me. As we get to the line, they take out their passports, and I look down at their Grenadian passports. I'm dumbfounded, because they're obviously. So I said, let me see how this goes. So when they went to the passport agent, I actually let people behind me go in the queue because I'm just so macroing to find out what's going to happen. The immigration man took the passports and said, "Where did you get this?" "We are Grenadian." The passport officer called his boss. The boss came over, kept them waiting, and said, "Look, here it is again. More of the same. Russians coming in, posing as Grenadians." The boss was vexed. They were all vexed. They don't like it because under normal circumstances, they would need a visa. We're playing with fire. EU warned us time and time again. USA warned us. Yes, I know there's hypocrisy because USA does this $1 billion passport or whatever. That's not the issue. The issue is we are at risk. And this is only going to get more and worse. That's my thing. I have a lot of feelings about CBI, which I will get to later, but on the visa thing, we had this coming.
Let me bring in Dr. Fontaine here, because I want to get once Mr. Lovell gets back here. But I want us to reflect on how much of this is just naked xenophobia by the current administration in Washington, or is this really part of a process here of really saying to the region, those with the CBI programs, that, and again, because we've seen that pattern with the EU as well. The EU have had these concerns for many years. Or is this much a concern about the manner in which these programs are administered? I mean, the reality is, though, that you do have due diligence processes and programs in place, where people are vetted. I mean, now they are properly vetted. Maybe they were not in the past. I don't know the extent of the vetting processes. But I know that in the context of Grenada, the vetting, that they have improved the way in which they're vetting this. So I want to get your thoughts on this, Dr. Fontaine, and as much as that there ought to be a critique of perhaps how the program is administered, especially on the context of the residency requirement here. But we're also seeing a naked xenophobia and anti-immigrant sentiment from Washington as well.
Well, I don't think so. I think these are genuine concerns of a national security nature, and I'll tell you why. The Dominica program, which I know very well because I've been reporting on it since 2009, the British, they actually postponed our entry or visa entry because they got several Russians, at least a dozen Russians, who were initially banned from the United Kingdom, who got back in on Dominican passports with different names. And that's the reason that they gave for actually suspending the visa program, because they saw it as a security threat. Yeah, it was they had deported individuals out of the country and they were able to get back in using Dominican passports. Now, in 2009, I first raised the concerns we had in Dominica about just that. The government said they were doing due diligence. I checked out the due diligence firm and found out that they were doing absolutely nothing. In fact, several crooks and criminals were getting our Dominican passport. And I wrote about it, where I actually outlined the fact, and I listed at the time, it was in 2009, I was able to find 10 known international crooks and criminals, including the most wanted fugitive from India. I was able to document that these individuals had our Dominican passports. In response, the Prime Minister actually sued me in a case, Roosevelt Skerritt versus Thompson Fountain, that went to the courts in 2009. But when we started the process of discovery, where I basically said, well, okay, you're denying that this is true. Why don't you give us a list of all of the persons that have received Dominican passports? That case immediately disappeared from the court calendar. And it has not seen the light of day since then. This has been an ongoing concern for countries across the region, because ours was even worse, as I said, in that we are actually doing name changes. So persons will come into Dominica under one name and live in with a passport under a different name, which made it even more difficult for authorities across the world to keep track of all the different criminals and those who had a very keen interest in having our Dominican passport. So I don't see it as a problem of the Americans. I just see it as our problem, our failure repeatedly to do the right thing and to take necessary action. I'll just say finally, the government of Dominica, in my view, they absolutely got drunk on this CBI program. And that's the reason why we have filed a lawsuit. We actually took them in court because there was zero accountability, zero reporting to the Dominican public. We were able to calculate that billions of dollars was being generated and the country was seeing very little of it. The Dominican government has given individuals, turned over the majority of these monies to individuals outside of Dominica. It's not coming back into our treasury. So in addition to all of the security issues, we have real accounting problems here in Dominica. And so this program has been a mess for a very long time. And as long as the money was rolling in, it seemed that there was no intention on the part of this government to do anything about it. And now that countries are taking notice, I believe it's going to have some very serious repercussions, unfortunately, for the people of Dominica.
Mr. Lovell, before we lost you here, we were having a conversation about those Antigua and Barbuda appear to be in a unique situation here, owing to this sanctioned U.S. vessel that Antigua eventually seized and how they treated with it. But then again, that was also a product of big power politics between the U.S. and Russia, with the Russia-Ukraine war and the sanctioning of all Russian oligarchs and all of that, which some of them are now, again, in the good graces of the current president of the United States and whatnot. But the question that I pose to these to all of these gentlemen here, which I'll bring back, Brian, on the same question, is how much of this, in your view, is about xenophobia and anti-immigrant sentiment on the part of the regime in Washington versus legitimate concerns, migration concerns around the CBI? Of course, you told us here, for full disclosure, that you are one of the ones that really piloted CBI legislation in Antigua and Barbuda. So could you not have seen this coming? As Brian said earlier, the chickens here are coming home to roost. In hindsight, in retrospect, do you regret, or having the foresight to think about CBI as a sustainable path to economic development for your country? Just unmute the mic, sir. Just unmute the mic again.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead now.
Yes,
go ahead.
That's a very good question. But I would say this. When we introduced the CBI program in Antigua in 2013, it was after we had had extensive discussions with the authorities in the United States of America, in Canada, and in Europe. And we designed it so that there would have been a residency requirement of 35 days And that met muster of all the various authorities that we spoke to. Now, that 35-day requirement was subsequently reduced to 5 days. And that was in 2014 when the current administration was elected. When they reduced it to 5 days, it still remained the only program in the O.E.C.S. with a residency requirement. There's no residency requirement in any of the other territories that have CBI programs. The reason that was given as to why Antigua would face partial restrictions was that we had no residency requirement. So that is clearly inaccurate, because as minimal as it is the only territory with residency requirements. Now, I appreciate that this matter has created reputational issues, and those matters, of course, reflect on the respective governments. How have they managed this program? But I would say, in principle, the acquisition of citizenship does not only come through birth. We know that. You can acquire citizenship through marriage. You can acquire citizenship if you live in a country, for example, Antigua, for 7 years. And more recently, you can acquire citizenship if you are an investor in the country. Of course, the question is whether or not the programs have been managed in a way that one could really say that the people who are investing are real bona fide investors that countries who permit visa-free travel to their countries can be satisfied with. So in the end, I don't think the issue is really whether CBI is justifiable. I think if it is properly managed, it is, I see nothing wrong with it. But there is always the tendency to abuse. For example, there are 3 options in our program. There is the National Development Fund, and there is the investment in business, and also there is the other option where you can be an investor, where you purchase real estate at a certain level, and that would constitute investment. At the end of the day, what we're looking at is there a sufficient nexus between the country where you hold that passport and the citizenship and the individual who now seeks to travel on that passport? And I think the questions that have been raised in Europe and other places is that you have people arriving who know nothing about the country, they've never visited the country, and that obviously would raise concerns for any admitting country. So I think the issue is not so much the CBI or the CIP, but rather the way in which it has been managed and the management which has given rise to certain reputational questions that have been difficult to surmount. But there's not only the question of CBI passports, there's also diplomatic passports, which do not come through the Citizenship by Investment program. Diplomatic passports remain a matter of discretion for the prime ministers in the country. And some of the persons, for example, there's a man by the name of Alex Saab. He's Venezuelan. He was indicted in the United States of America, but he also happened to be an economic envoy for Antigua and Barbuda, and he held a diplomatic passport. So it was only after he had been indicted and the red flags were raised that the government removed his credentials as a diplomat representing Antigua and Barbuda. So I think these are some of the issues that have created reputational challenges and obviously fears in some of the capitals of Europe and Canada and the United States.
Brian, I noticed that you squirmed there for a second on the whole question of the residency requirement issue there. But Brian, yes, go ahead, please. I want you to pick up on what Mr. Lovell said there.
Let's not play smokes and mirrors here. 30 days is not residency. 30 days is a holiday, right? So there's no residency requirements. They don't have to come and buy an apartment or live in an apartment and live there. They just have to come. Now it's 5 days. Let's not even put that on the table, because that really is nothing at all. It's just a visit, collect your passport, leave 5 days later. Yes, we're doing due diligence on the people. And I understand that Grenada is probably the best at this due diligence, which is maybe a reason why we've been less affected than the others. I'm not an expert. I don't work in the area. What I know that we do not do due diligence on are the projects, these real estate projects that are being financed through the sale of passports. And I have two questions about this. Who came up with this idea in the first place of selling passports and then turning around and giving the money to foreign investors? Not lending, not equity, not shares. We give them the money. So we are selling our national patrimony, the patrimony that our ancestors fought and died for. We're turning around, we're selling the passports, and what do we get out of it? What have I gotten out of Grenada's CBI problem? Not a blasted thing. At the same time, we are looking to build a new hospital here in Grenada. We have Project Polaris, $500 million. We're scrunting all over the world looking for money to build this hospital. And yet, last year, we gave 500 million EC dollars to foreign investors, Chinese investors, European investors, all kinds of investors, Dubai investors. We turn around and give them the money. That, to me, makes no sense. It makes no sense politically, nationally, economically, and socially. And at the same reason, when we give them the money, we do no due diligence on the projects themselves. Yes, we do due diligence on the people who get the passports, flawed as it is, but on the project, any project that they want to do, they can do. Right now at the north end of Grenada, which is a national park, by the way, national protected area, the Chinese are building this monstrosity of an 18-story building that looks like two large, whatever you want to call them. The most ugly, un-Grenadian, unnatural thing that you've ever seen right at the north end of the most pristine part of Grenada. It will be a failure. I can tell you this, I'll put my finger on it. It will be a failure. That's not the place. We're building square pegs in round holes. The northern end of area of our island is beautiful. And yes, you can have hotels up there. We have Petiance, 20 rooms. That's the kind of tourism that that area needs. Not a 1,000-room, ugly monstrosity of a hotel that would be at home in Dubai or Hong Kong or Shanghai, not in Grenada. So we are just prostituting ourselves. On the one hand, we're giving money away to foreigners to build the wrong hotel in the wrong places, which will be failure. And that's the due diligence that is really important that we are not doing.
Mm-hmm. Gentlemen, though, I want to pick up on the question here of the anti-immigrant xenophobia coming from Washington here on the question, and sort of the hypocrisy that you guys seem to not to skip over there. But I mean, you know, we've heard, and of course, the president of the United States, he also proposed his golden visa as well. So it to me, it appears as though, well, he wants to get in on the game that the Caribbean has been on, and notwithstanding the limitations of the program, notwithstanding that there is no residency requirement, notwithstanding that, you know, there have been some shady folks who are involved in this, right? Notwithstanding that they don't even speak English, for example, some of these applicants who have changed their names, notwithstanding all of these factors, gentlemen, we've heard his comments about why can't we get more people from Norway and Europe? Of course, I'm not sure why a Norwegian would want to live in the United States to begin with, when they have the best quality of life and their life expectancies are much better than the average citizen of the United States. But then who would want to live in the United States under these current circumstances? But there is that. But there is also another curious question here, because while the administration in Washington talks about, you know, all of these CBI programs and what is the required, you know, no due diligence, whatever the case might be, we have crypto billionaires who are setting up these sort of, they're carving out land for themselves and creating their own territories. I mean, right now there is a major issue in St. Kitts and Nevis. You know, he's setting up this what is called a quote-unquote sustainability zone. But we know that a lot of crypto billionaires are very closely aligned to this current administration in Washington. They're also setting up the same thing in Honduras. I was very curious that St. Kitts and Nevis is not on the list, even though I'm sure they are CBI holders or whatever the case might be, but they are also high net worth individuals who are carving out lots of land and lots of territory across the world in developing country spaces. And I'm just curious to get your gentlemen's thoughts on this question as well. Is there a hypocrisy here?
If I may on this one.
Okay, everyone wants to jump in. Yes. Harold, go ahead, please, Harold. We go Harold, Thompson, and then Brian. Yes, go ahead, Harold.
I've made the point more than once. This is not about citizenship by investment. That's a smokescreen, and we need to accept that. The reason that was given why partial restrictions were placed on Antigua and Barbuda was that it had no residency requirement. I hear Brian, and I appreciate what he's saying. However, the fact is, limited as it is the only country that has even a suggestion of residency requirement. And whilst we are with that, the entire O.E.C.S region who have residency programs, they recently concluded extensive negotiations with the European Union, where we have access to the Schengen countries. And they have agreed on 30 days. They say that's sufficient for them. 30 days. The European Union has said 30 days is sufficient for them. So whilst I appreciate the concerns that one may raise with respect to whether 30 days would be considered sufficient in ordinary circumstances, the European Union have said that 30 days is sufficient for them. And all the O.E.C.S countries, they will be establishing the regional authority, and the new legislation provides for 30 days. But coming back to your point, Dr. Bubb, the fact is, the real reasons are hidden. It is not about citizenship by investment, because if it was about citizenship by investment, as you say, what happened to St. Kitts? What happened to Grenada? What happened to St. Lucia? It's something else. I pointed to the fact that as far as Antigua and Barbuda is concerned, there was the issue where you had a particular gentleman who was indicted in the United States. He was an Antiguan envoy. Obviously, that would have raised flags. Recently in Antigua and Barbuda, we gave massive concessions to a Chinese group at a place known as Guana Island. They have been given not only concessions, but they are allowed to bypass customs. They are allowed to bypass immigration. It has been described as a state within a state. It has attracted attention from Newsweek. Newsweek did a special feature on it. And what they see, I'm just saying, what they see, the perception is that China seems to be gaining a massive foothold because they see a blurred line between the private sector in China and the state sector in China. And these are some of the real reasons that are driving this decision. And the governance of our countries is also a factor. And so we must not be fooled that this is about CBI, because the United States, as you say, they're about to introduce their own golden passports. The Canadians have always had a program where you can become a citizen by investment. So it is nothing new. There are countries in Europe who have also done it. It is the management, is the governance. Those are the issues that we need to address, but those are not the real issues that are driving this. Otherwise, there would have been other countries that would have been included.
Yes, Thompson, let me bring you in here, and then Brian.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I could not agree with Harold more. I tend to believe that we have the whole geopolitics at play there. Yeah. It has to do with the presence, if you like, of the Chinese, very much in Dominica and in Antigua and Barbuda. The Chinese have built some of the biggest embassies in Dominica and Antigua. And also, people must know that as far as the U.S. is concerned, they already had protection against any person having a Dominican or Antiguan passport. Because when you go to get a visa to enter the United States, they don't consider your Dominica or Antigua passport. They consider your place of birth. And based on that, the interview is conducted. Because remember that on the passport, they still indicate where you were born. Yes. So it was never an issue, as Harold said, of the CBI program per se, although there are concerns. But I also think, in addition to what Harold pointed out, I also suspect that there is no consensus amongst the bigger countries, the Europeans, the British, the Canadians, and the US government, that they must stamp out this CBI program. And that's exactly what is happening. We also have to remember that within the European Union itself, Malta, which was one of the biggest countries that was doing this similar program like ours, they had to give it up, costing them literally tens of billions of dollars every year. And they were forced to give up that program if they wanted to remain within the European Union. So I think it's part of a concerted effort by those industrialized or larger countries to get rid of this program. Hence the reason why I believe that it is on its last legs. It is very difficult to see that program surviving beyond next year. And, obviously, and the other issues that Harold raised, the geopolitics certainly has played a major role there as well.
Brian, let's bring you back here.
Yeah, look, God knows there's enough that we could say about the American president's decisions being affected by race. We could write an encyclopedia about that. I don't particularly see that being I don't see the race card being a factor in this particular case of Antigua. Let's be frank. Antigua has a record of cases in American courts. There's the case with the ship, the boat. There's another case being brought against, I can't remember the name of the lawyer. So Antigua has sorry?
Martinez?
Yeah. So Antigua has a presence that's not really welcome in the American jurisprudence system, right? Antigua is no more black than any of the rest of us. So if it was a race issue, we'd all be in the same boat. So I don't see this as me saying so, I don't see this as an example of Trump racism. I see this as an example of what we had been warned about from before. This was so foreseeable. This is a slow train wreck that has been coming, and it has been coming and building up steam, and to continue with the metaphor. And it's no surprise that it has landed on our shores, because we were told this would happen. If you don't clean up your act, you will face the consequences. And we're now living with the consequences.
Gentlemen, again, on the crypto question, nobody raised the crypto question here. I noticed everyone skillfully skipped it. Because a lot of these crypto guys are in bed with the administration. And they're going about, just acquiring land and, setting up their own little fiefdoms, little neo-colonial fiefdoms. Nevis is, of course, the latest, at least in the Caribbean, for this. But of course, Honduras has been seeing this. And any thoughts on that? Because that is something that the U.S. clearly has no issue with, given the relationship that the crypto world has with the administration.
And I think that's the issue. I think you answered your question. This is a geopolitical issue. It is an issue where, if on the current scale, where the U.S. obviously have decided that they are friends and they are foes, and depending on which camp you fall in, you will be treated in a particular way. And they also have friends of friends and friends of foes. Mm-hmm. Therefore, if you are categorized as a crypto billionaire, crypto giant, and your designation is that of friend or friend of friend, then you're free. But if you are seen as a friend of a foe or a foe, then you're going to be treated differently. And that answers the question. And so you have invitations being sent to the South Africans, who the president seems to have a special affinity for.
The white South Africans. We have to be clear on this. White
we have
South
to be
Africans.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
That is about race here.
And yes, but that is within the South African context. Yes. And so I agree with you that these are the issues, because he takes the view that if you are not 100% with the US, then you're against the US. And that's the reality of of President Trump's view of how he's going to address the border issues. Now, he's decided that he's going to address what he calls his southern border, the Caribbean. And so he's now addressing that in a very serious way. And it so happens that he's seeking to introduce or to reintroduce the doctrine that this is the sphere of influence of the United States. And those are some of the deeper questions that we face, and we must, as a region, I believe, speak with a united voice. And that voice has to be that we within the Caribbean, yes, we would wish to remain a zone of peace. And I think that is very important. But it's going to take a certain amount of skill. It's going to take tact. It's going to require diplomatic ingenuity in order to ensure that as a region, we can navigate and negotiate these very difficult waters. We're very small developing or small island developing states. And so our army in Antigua, doesn't even reach 1,000 people. Our Navy is a broken down Coast Guard vessel. Our Air Force is a helicopter. We have no clout internationally, and we are systemically insignificant and weak. And therefore, if we do not speak with a united voice, we're going to be taken out one by one. But that does not exclude the fact that as people, we also must be responsible to ensure that our governance systems, our systems whereby we have allowed unsavory characters to hold our passports and to create what may be perceived as a threat to the security interests of our countries. We have to be real as far as those issues are concerned, and we have to step up to the plate, and we have to present a governance structure that we ourselves as a people can say that we are proud of.
Mm-hmm. Let me see if Brian?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I lived in South Africa for many years, and there are no less persecuted people than white South Africans. They are the ones doing the persecuting. But again, on this issue, I don't think that we can say that this is race. It's not race. We have been told about this. It's like the fishing thing. Grenada is now facing a fishing ban. I think it's from January 1st. This was another slow train wreck that was coming. We knew this was happening. We knew that we hadn't done. And it's the same thing with CBI. When somebody warns you, if you keep doing this, I'm going to punish you. And you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, you're going to get punished. So it's no surprise that this has happened. I'm just surprised that it's as relatively mild as it is. Sorry, Antigua. But but any day now, you're gonna get more and more. This snowball is not going away. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the reason is, like I said when I was waiting at the immigration line in Heathrow, we are subverting the national security policies of these countries by letting people in the back door. The same case about the Dominican Russian guy who was sanctioned and sent out of England, comes back in as a rewashed Dominican with a new name. How short-sighted is this of our leaders? And there's another thing about sustainability of financial flows. Grenada went mad on selling passports to Russia at the outbreak of the Ukraine war. We sold 4,500 passports in 1 year to Russians until America said stop it, and we stopped it. So if you look at our CBI flows, both going into the government and going into these spurious, awful real estate project, it was like this in 2003, 2004, and now it's like this. That's no way to run a budget. You can imagine you're running the Ministry of Finance budget and you have no idea how much money you're going to get this year, next year, or the year after. You get it when you get it, but you cannot plan for it. That's no way to run a financial, the finances of a country. And also the warning, the thing about easy money. It's too easy. And again, I want to reiterate, why are we giving this money away to foreigners? All of the money, if we're going to sell passports, fine. It's not fine, but we're going to sell passports. Fine. Why are we giving away the money to foreign investors? Why don't we put the money into our countries themselves, build roads, hospitals, schools? Why? I really don't get this thing. And if we're going to give this money to help build hotels, why don't we lend them? If I was In fact, I'd love to get into CBI myself. I think I might come up with a CBI project myself because I want some of this free money. I'm Grenadian and I'm not getting anything. Why don't we lend it to them? Have a fund, put the money into a national fund so that developers of projects who are good projects and is subject to due diligence, just like a bank would, the government could operate like a bank. Lend the money that we get from the sale of passports to people who want to build hotels. Don't give it to them. The amount of foreigners who have become millionaires on our backs is staggering. And we're still doing it. And I don't get the concept of just giving away. Lend it to them. Or better still, leave it in the country, build infrastructure, build our own island economies rather than giving it away.
Not one single hospital with all of that National Transformation Fund. Now they're talking about the project Polaris, but let's see, it's all been real estate projects up and down the wazoo in Grenada, one of which Brian, you're saying it's a white elephant.
Half of them are not. Last Suggest, I did the piece on Last Suggest in April this year. Where was it? Last Suggest in March and April this year. They're doing 20% occupancy. 20% occupancy? I could have told them that years ago. You cannot build hotels where the people don't want to go. The biggest fallacy in tourism is build it and they will come. You cannot make tourists go where you want them to go. And mark my words, that monstrosity that we're building at Levera will destroy the northern end of the country and it will be a failure. I'm not going to put this on it. I'll put my whole hand on it.
But gentlemen, yes, Dr. Fonte, is there anything else you wish to add?
Yes, sure, Dr. Bob. I wanted to also piggyback on what was just said there by Brian. We have similar issues in Dominica, and I'm surprised at how similar our issues are. Our government actually went into our national reserve to allow the building of a hotel that was financed through the sale of passports, right in the Carbridge there. And this hotel, it is lucky if you have 2 visitors a week to this hotel. And it has been subsidized even now by the government. They have given over a substantial amount of money to a company called Montreal Management Corporation that has now turned around, and they're the ones building our international airport. So they're giving us our money that was raised through our passports to build our airport, international airport, and yet we have no control over those monies. So tomorrow, MMC can say, well, I've done enough. We are having cost overruns and so on, and they could quit and go. And there is no control over this. So I think that the issue of accountability, and also how it is that we got that so wrong. You know, how it is that our governments, and I know that Lovell, I'm sure when he crafted the program, our government as well, the party that I now lead, we were in government in 1995 when we so-called re-engineered the program that was started under the former government, and we had a lot of safeguards in that. So what we were doing at that time is that we would actually loan the money to hoteliers, and they would have had to pay back the government. So that's how we got one of our best hotels in Dominica, Jungle Bay. And the Garvey Hotel. These are 2 hotels that were built, but the monies were loaned to the proprietors, and then they were paid back, because the idea was that this monies would go into a revolving fund. Just a couple of years ago, our government gave a public servant $75 million to build a hotel, and he walks away with a developer's fee of $12 million. That's the kind of nonsense and the kind of corruption that you have going on in those programs. So they've gone a long way from what the intentions were, and that is why we are having it, and that is why we are seeing the government's clamping down. And I will just say quickly as well that in June they were given notice that the US would take action. They laughed it off, as we saw in Antigua, saying, well, no way that's going to happen. Our government told our people they have nothing to worry about. The government, US, basically is just bluffing. Now they have done the partial ban. It will be reviewed again in 6 months. And my sense tells me that there will be a total ban against Dominica. And with a total ban will come even green card holders now will not be able to go to the United States.
And it's not. Go ahead.
If I may, though. If I may.
Yes.
The question that was raised by Brian, I want to agree with Brian on the issue of fiscal management. Now, when we designed it, it was very clear that the CIP would not be used for recurrent expenditure. The CIP was always intended as a fund that would be used to liquidate some of the debt that we had on the books, also for investment, which would create employment. And we had designed a program. I don't say that it was the perfect economic model, but we designed it in collaboration with the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. They felt that this was something that could work. The fact that it could be finessed and it could be done in a better way, I have no argument with that. Where I agree with Brian is that you cannot build a fiscal program where you do not know how much money you're going to bring in the year that you're budgeting for. And also, we all knew that there would have been risks. And therefore, one decision could effectively torpedo your entire fiscal program. So I'm on board as far as that is concerned. And when we designed it, it was intended that the focus would have been on the development aspect, the investment aspect, not so much the as is commonly called the selling of passports, where you can come, you pay a certain amount, and you walk away with a passport. That was never our intention. The intention always was that there would have been a nexus through genuine bona fide investment in the country. And we introduced it at a time when we were facing very serious headwinds as a result of the global economic recession. And it was not easy, because what are you going to do? You can increase taxes. That's a no-no. You can't borrow at concessionary rates, because we are classified as a mid to upper income country. And insofar as grants are concerned, we did not qualify for grants. And we therefore had to look at another way to raise revenues so that we could move forward as a nation. And that, to me, remains a legitimate path that we took. Was it a perfect path? No, I don't say so. And looking at it through the eyes of 2025, I believe there are serious changes that have to be made. But I also feel that the various countries came together with the European Union. They have fashioned something which the European Union have said is satisfactory for them. And I think that we can go with that. But we also have to take into account that there's a difference between the Caribbean countries and the European countries that had this program. Because when you had a passport, say from Malta, that entitled you to go and live in that country, and also to live in the other countries, in the other Schengen countries in Europe. And that obviously would have created issues which would not necessarily be relevant to our issues, where you would not have the right to live, but you would have the right to enter. And at that point, their own immigration requirements, I'm sure, would be sufficient to keep you out.
Brian, yes, I want to bring you in, and I want to pick up on something Mr. Lovell said there, but that would be the framing for the bookend of the program as we go to closing comments from you gentlemen. But Brian, I know that you wanted to piggyback on what Dr. Fontaine articulated here, or what was it?
Yeah, it's
yes.
Sustainability, right? Again, this issue of sustainability. You cannot have a fiscal system that is 100 one year and then 5 the next year. And also to we the people, and my thanks to Sandra Ferguson for that phrase, I love it. We the people whose nationality and patrimony is being sold, we have no idea, we have no information on what is happening to these projects in Grenada. At the end of our prime beach, Grand Anse Beach, is Kawana Bay, another CBI project that has stalled. There was a big court case. We paid the previous developer $21 million just to walk away, plus all the money he got from the passport and everything else. We paid him $21 million to make the case go away from ICSID. Of course, we lost the case. Then we have Mount Hartman, another national area, a national park. Preservation orders have been issued there. Again, some Chinese are building something out there. Nothing has happened for 1 year. Not one piece of work has happened, but they still have. So
and remember, you were threatened if you wanted to go there with the drone and all of that. Remember that?
Yeah, I went on a snooping mission to find out what's going on. And one of the local agents of the developers threatened me, oh, we're going to take you to court. Go right ahead. Do it. Please do it. So we have no idea. If it is our money that is being used for these nonsensical waste of time projects, at least give us the information. How much money? The books are not even audited. I have not seen any audited accounts for any of the CBI projects that we have done, even the ones that are being implemented. Why are we not given audited accounts? We are the shareholders of this. Sorry, some trucks going by.
That's okay. That's okay.
We, the people, are the shareholders of these projects, and we are being taken advantage of because we have no idea. We make no money. Foreigners walk in and walk out like this guy. $21 million he walked away with just to make the case go away. Plus all the people who got their passports before, we paid them back. So
those management and governance issues. That's not the CBI issue.
It is a CBI issue. It is a CBI.
Yes, but Brian, where you locate a hotel, that's not to do with CBI. That's a business decision that somebody chose a bad location. You can choose a bad location whether it's CBI or not.
All right, go to the bank and see would any bank lend money to this monstrosity they're building to the north end of the island? I guarantee you they would not.
It comes down to a management. That's a management and a business decision. That's a bad business decision. Where you locate a hotel with respect, where you locate a hotel with respect, does not speak to the CBI. It speaks to the fact that those who are managing it decided to choose a bad location. You can choose a bad location if an investor comes without anything. He comes and he chooses a bad location and you go along with his decision.
I'm not looking at theory. I'm looking at practice. Let me just finish. I'm looking at practice. The whole structure of the CBI, the institutional financial structure of the agency and the CBI is geared on numbers. The CBI wants to report at the end of every year that we sold so many passports. Nobody's going to ask difficult questions about the projects themselves.
That's a fair point. Fair point.
So the government should act like a bank. It should do due diligence on the projects, just like ordinary hotels do. So that is a fault of the CBI program.
No, it's a fault of your government.
Well, it's your government. Look at the Dominican hotel. Look at the hotel in Dominica that we just heard has 2 guests a week. Again, no project due diligence. The government
also spoke of Jungle Bay as a successful project.
Like it. Not just give money to anybody who comes through the door and says, I have a CBI project. Oh yeah, you're going to build an 18-story building in the north end of the island. It's going to
remember, historically, buildings in Grenada were not supposed to be taller than a coconut tree.
Well, that's a tall coconut tree.
Right.
18-story. You'll be able to see it from St. Vincent.
Yeah, but gentlemen, I'm sure you can agree to disagree here. But as we get into the final part of this conversation before we go to closing comments, Mr. Lovell, you raised a very important point that I want us to reflect on here. And I'm going to contextualize this in this way. You know, our developing country economies in the Caribbean, we went to Britain and said we want our independence. Britain said, okay, have your independence, whatever the case might be. They did not pay reparations to us for all of the free labor that was given by way of the colonialism and slavery. They got compensation for that, and they left us to our own devices. Then these same global North countries, by way of the Bretton Woods institution, no offense, Brian and Thompson, both of you associated with those institutions, with those with the horns, right? But they came to you and said, okay, yes, we would initially give you concessionary loans, but now we consider you middle income. You're going to be treated like the rest of us, and you know, and on top of that, we'll give you loans that will saddle you in debt, but at the same time, whatever aid programs that we've given you, traditionally development aid programs, we're going to take that back, right? So Caribbean governments have decided that these are the ways in which we are going to think about our development practices, whether that's by CBI or other developmental activities. And then the same countries where these Bretton Woods institutions are located now turn to you and says, Oh no, we don't like that. We don't like that. You guys do something else, right? So which is it? They have really, essentially pulled back with respect to their development partnership in many respects, right? Now China saw an opportunity there, and China says, okay, you want to get concessionary financing on these things? Saudi Arabia sees that opportunity as well, and many Caribbean jurisdictions have said, well, if you don't want, to treat us in the way that you treated us perhaps in the 90s with concessionary exports on our bananas and things like that, then we are going to carve our own path, and that would mean looking at other global South development opportunities. But these global North countries continue to pressure the region. So it's like, what is the point of all of this? If you're going to be saying that we want to carve our own development path, but yet you have a problem with the path that we are carving for ourselves. Dr. Fontaine, I want you to pick up on that question.
It's a very difficult one for us, as you rightly indicated. I've done a significant amount of work in terms of the high debt burden that the Caribbean islands are saddled with for that very same reason. We are no longer entitled to concessional lending, and we are forced to borrow at commercial rates. And very often, the countries continue to accumulate debt. And with this very high debt burden, given the amount that we have to repay on a monthly, yearly basis, it really squeezes out any kind of investments that we can have with regards to development. And that has been one of the major challenges, I believe, that we've been faced with in the Caribbean. The fact that we have had to pay so much back on loans, and that is impacting very heavily our resources that are available to spend on health and education and the other parts of the economy. Now, should we be blaming the advanced countries for that, or should we take some of that blame for ourselves? Because a lot of the borrowing that we sometimes do as a government can be considered to be wasteful, in the sense that we spend it wastefully rather than spending on some very good projects. And even now with the CBI, we see some of that in context. Because you would think, for example, that responsible governments, having access to these billions of dollars in CBI revenues would have used those monies to prop up the major sectors of the economy, like agriculture, tourism, and so on, and really help to build investments, build a manufacturing base, use those monies for that reason. None of that is happening. And similarly, when they've borrowed in the past, they have used these monies on wasteful projects that has not really come back. So I think some of the blame has to be put on governance, on the way our governments have been able to deal with this. It is true, based on per capita income, we are classified as middle income countries. That designation is not going to go away anytime soon. But
which I find a problematic designation, I'm sorry, given the climate change challenges that we also have to confront. But please proceed.
Yes, so what we have to do in this case then is to look at creative ways. So, for example, I was involved in a project a couple of years ago with the United Nations where we were looking to see how, given the issue of climate change, how we can look at some issues of debt to climate change swaps, in the sense that countries that are prepared to spend more on resilience to climate change, building seawalls, shoring up their hillsides, and so on, if they're prepared to do that kind of spending, they would receive concessions on the repayment of the loans. And that is something I believe that the Caribbean countries should explore further. I think that is one way out. That's one way we can actually get the industrial countries to help us in the region, if we can come up with these kinds of creative ways. So the climate change issue poses an opportunity, I believe, in that regard. And we started some work on that, and I hope the Caribbean countries can actually pick it up to move forward with a proposal like that. Because what it would do is that it would force these industrial countries to actually give us some kind of debt forgiveness while we in the region are using this specifically for climate resilient purposes.
Brian, same question. I mean, you've worked in development spaces. And again, at some point, I believe, this whole question of CBI will have to sunset at some point. It's just, as you have articulated, it's not sustainable. So where do we go from here with respect to our developmental prospects, given the framing that I articulated earlier here.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I get the need for CBI float. I get the need. We do need that. We do need new sources of revenue for our investment in infrastructure and so on. But this is not working the way it was designed to work by the framers, including present company. I don't think that if you went back to when you wrote that act and you fast forwarded today, did you think it would be like it is today? You probably had a different vision. The vision that was articulated at the beginning is not what has worked out in practice. And again, this is going to be my clarion call. Stop giving away our national patrimony to foreigners to build empty hotels. In La Sagesse, we've got 6 census. Like I said, it's doing 25, 30% at best. They had to lay off a whole bunch of 6 managers last year because there's nobody in the hotel. I went there, I could see it. Lovely hotel, nobody there. Right next to it, Range Developments, and I think Dominica, you know Range quite well. Right next to it, Range is building another hotel, literally next door, the Intercontinental. So while they have one hotel that is struggling along at 20, 30% occupancy, they're building another one next door and stop press. They've just been given rights to do a third one. So in one beach, we have 3 developments being put together by Range Developments with the sale of passport. The first one is failing, and they're now doing 2 more. Do you think any bank, myself included in my banking days, would lend to the second and third project? Don't you think you should see whether the first one is a viable one before you start doing second and third projects? But no, this is my point. There is no due diligence on the projects because the people involved and the institutions involved and the staff involved, they get praise and they get probably their staff benefits and so on. Their whole record of achievement is based on the amount of passports you sold. How many passports did you sell last year? So nobody's going to ask too many difficult questions about, is this really a project that we want to do? You think anybody in Grenada would say no to the Levera project, which alone is responsible for, I don't know how many passports are being sold? They're not going to say no because their job is to sell passports. So nobody does project due diligence. Nobody. And that is, not only is it unsustainable, it is economically a disaster. We are creating future white elephants. We already have them, and there's going to be more. And when that monstrosity in Levera is finished, I'm going to go up there and vomit because it is so ugly, and it is going to be an economic disaster.
You say you're going to vomit. I mean, I went up there on Levera Beach, and I wanted to do a requiem, a funeral mass, really. Given what I saw up there, it was so sad and depressing, and that's supposed to be a Ramsar site that Grenada signed on to. Grenada signed on to this.
And don't even talk about the leatherback turtles, which is their natural nesting ground.
Yes.
So I asked the Chinese, I went to a meeting with the Chinese, environmental consultation. What a joke that was. We love you, we are Grenadians like you, and we're going to build a turtle museum. Oh, so we won't have any turtles.
Oh, yeah, a museum. Right, yeah, sure.
And nobody cares.
Listen, I understand. Brian, I understand those points.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to...
Let me just finish one more. The people who buy passports, the theory is that they're buying a room in a hotel. They're not. They're buying a passport. So you can pay the government $200, or you could just add another $50 and you get a room. It's neither here nor there. Whether they get dividends, profits out of that investment, they don't care. So that is a recipe for building white elephants that will be empty. St. Kitts is like that. You look at St. Kitts, you go down Frigate Bay during the day, you see all these condos. You think, wow, and they're all financed by CBI, apartments, condos, small hotels, everything. Go at night, not one light. They're all empty. And it's going to be the same thing here because there's no project due diligence. Banks have a useful function in that respect. I know we hate banks, but when I did the financing for the original lessors back in 92 or 3 with Leon Taylor, local investor, put his hard-earned cash in, borrowed money, did it the old-fashioned way. We did due diligence on every single aspect of that project, the marketing, the environmental, the economic, the management, everything. We knew everything about that project. That doesn't happen with these CBI projects.
Okay, what I'm saying.
Yes, Mr. Lovell, please. Go ahead.
Yes. I'm not going to speak on the issues in Grenada. I know nothing of those projects which have been mentioned. But my takeaway from all that Brian has said is that there's some decisions which have been taken which do not meet the required standards of project due diligence and other important issues that ought to be addressed when you are making a decision to build a hotel or any other project financed under the CBI. But that's a separate issue. I also want to say that insofar as Antigua and Barbuda is concerned, I'm not here as a spokesman to the government of Antigua and Barbuda. And we have a marine area, protected area, where, again, a Chinese private company have been given total rights to that area in complete violation of the marine principles that we all hold dear, and in terms of environmental sustainability. I have my issues with the government of Antigua and Barbuda, and that's why I'm part of the opposition in Antigua and Barbuda. So that's not my issue either. But I want to speak to the question that you asked in terms of sustainable development models, and also whether or not when we speak on the international stage, we are taken seriously. I remember when I was Minister of Finance, it was during the global economic recession. And one of the representatives from a global north country, he pointed out to me that Antigua and Barbuda is systemically unimportant. As far as the global system is concerned, the global financial system, we represent less than 0.11% of whether it be trade, whether it be population or size. And until we begin to think seriously of moving to a level where we put on the table a confederation of Caribbean states. I didn't say a federation because we tried the federation. The individual nationalities and identities are too strong, I think, at this time to sustain a federation. You will never get a king to agree to become a prince. You will never get a queen to agree to become a princess. And therefore, we have to find a way to pool our sovereignties, but where we have greater political clout. And I'm saying we need a model similar to the European Union. And I'm referring to it as a confederation of Caribbean states, so that we speak with one voice and one powerful voice, because we have great orators in the Caribbean. Not only orators, but we have, for example, someone like Mia Motley, who is named as one of the most influential, 100 most influential women of 2025. But she represents a country that's a mere dot. Until we pool together so that her voice resonates not only for Barbados, but resonates for the entire Caribbean, we're going to face these problems. And when we try to introduce new models, because I'm yet to hear of a model that anybody can say, this is guaranteed to be sustainable. This is the model to go forward. I've had my interactions with the IMF. I've had my arguments with the IMF. There are things that they asked me to consider doing when I was Minister of Finance that I refused to do. And I know that in today's world, you're not going to be treated fairly. And when you're a small dot in the global sphere of things, you are not going to be treated with the seriousness that countries who have greater clout will be treated. And we need, as a Caribbean nation, as a Caribbean people, to really begin to see how can we step up our game so that on issues of climate change and also climate financing, on issues of the environment generally, on issues of the some of the pressures that are being brought to bear on us by the global north. You take, for example, how difficult it is to open a bank account in countries like Antigua and Barbuda. You try to open a bank account. You try to open a bank account in Antigua and Barbuda, and it's going to take you 3-4 weeks. I went to Canada the other day, and I went into Scotiabank at 9:30 in the morning, And by 9:45, I had my bank account with the number, with everything. What's the difference? I'm the same person. But the problem is, there are countries, and many the OECD countries, they have imposed requirements, restrictions on us that makes it very difficult for us to survive. And the only answer I see is for us to speak with one voice as a confederation, pooling our sovereignties and being able to speak on the global stage, not just for our individual countries, but as a bloc.
Well, say that to the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, but I have my own thoughts there on that. Brian, you probably know. But gentlemen, this has been a very important conversation. And, you know, we have to watch the space, especially in the context of the administration in Washington's new sort of Monroe Doctrine on steroids. They've published this new national security strategy here that really posits an aggressive posture. It's not a posture of partnership. It's quite frankly a posture of bullying. Well, you know, and those are the things that is a backdrop, I think, that Caribbean leaders may have to confront. And I also have to question whether or not this is sort of a divide and conquer tactics by Washington, to go into these jurisdictions and engage in the type of bullying that we're seeing happening now in the Western Hemisphere. But that aside, gentlemen, I want to get to you all for some closing comments on this very important conversation. We are watching the space because, again, as I said in the intro, who is next? We don't know what may be coming down the pike next. As one of you predicted, that there might be a total ban in 6 months. We don't know what will be happening next and what that would mean for travel and tourism, but what that would mean for our nationals resident in the American diaspora who are also now being confronted with these immigration pressures that we see. So, Dr. Fontaine, I want to go over to you, sir, for some closing comments. And once again, let me thank you for coming on the program today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bob, for having me. You know, one of the things that we always think about when you have these very serious situations arise is the unintended consequences or the fallout. And I'm hearing, for example, the Observer Radio is reporting that the Prime Minister is going to be expelling all of the Cubans from Antigua, the medical brigade. And I'm wondering whether or not that will also apply to Dominica, and whether this is some consequence of what has just started. At the end of the day, the people are the ones that are the biggest losers in all of this. I believe that our government, I can speak for our government here in Dominica, have behaved in an extremely irresponsible manner as far as the CBI program is concerned. When I tried to warn them 10 years ago, rather 15 years ago, I was sued in court instead of, listening to what I had to say, because I had the foresight then. I realized very early on when it started to give your passports to crooks and to criminals, persons like Alison Madueke getting diplomatic passports, a woman accused of stealing billions from the treasury in Nigeria, and these individuals were being coddled and given diplomatic passports. It appeared to me then that this would lend us into some kinds of problems. At the end of the day, the public is the one that's going to pay the major price. And already we're feeling it here in Dominica. Our students who are getting ready to go to study next year will not be able to do so. Individuals who probably have been waiting for several years to be in line to get their citizens, to get their green cards, they will be denied that come January. So, it's a very serious thing. And I hope that our governments take something out of this and that they really look closely at the program and see how they can make the kind of changes that would allow us to continue, at least probably continue for the time being, before we're able to phase this program out.
Brian, I will get to you because I know your wife is probably yelling at you in the background that you need to go treat with your errands. So it's the holiday season. I don't want to keep you from your decorations and the cleaning and the sorrel and the ginger beer and all of the goodies, and maybe the black cake, all of the goodies that you have to prepare.
Thank you very much, but I will not leave early. Trust me.
Okay.
So, closing statement. I take this as there are two things that I'm an economist. I'm also a very passionate, emotional person, right? My economist hat: stop giving away money to do these projects that have no due diligence. My passionate Grenadian hat, stop giving away money. So what we should do, if we're going to do this, I get it, there's money to be made here. Let us get the money. Let me get the money. Stop giving away my money. Let all the government go to the citizens of the country via the government, not to these private projects, which are spurious, unviable, uneconomical. There is no audited account that I can see that could tell me what's happening at La Sagesse, at Levra, there are no audited accounts nowhere. So let us act like shareholders. Let us act like a bank with all of this money. Let us demand information, demand accountability, and demand that the projects are what we want, not what these spurious project developers want. We don't want round hotels in square beaches, if you get what I mean. We want horses for courses. You cannot just take a small location and drop down 1,000-room hotel and think it will work. It will not work. And who's left with the hotel? We're not going to knock it down. It's going to be left there for hundreds or lots of years, many, many years. So we'll have to watch this empty thing at the northern end of the island. And we, the people, should get the money. We, the people, we should have a hospital, we should have roads, we should have schools, so we can point to something. And you could put a big sign on the hospital, on the school, on whatever else, brought to you by Grenada's CBI. This is where your patrimony went, to building a new hospital for you, not to build an empty hotel for them. We must get the benefit. And yes, I'm emotional about it because it really upsets me that we're doing this and we're paying the price.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Mr. Lovell.
Yes, I would say, and first of all, thank you for entertaining this panel. I think it was certainly very interesting for me. But my takeaway is our governments in the Caribbean, we owe a special duty of care, not to the United States, but to our people. To our people in terms of the need for transparency, for accountability, to make good governance decisions, to ensure that we create a path of sustainable development based on the creativity of our people and making the opportunities that that can be created, make those opportunities available so that our people can be the drivers of our development process. I feel that it is important that we speak as one voice in the Caribbean, because we will be individually isolated and cut off if we do not speak as far as possible. I'm not naive. I understand the realities. As far as possible with one voice. I'm encouraged that a CBI authority will be created. I think it will be based in Grenada. Yes. I think this will create the opportunity for proper due diligence and for the program to be run in a way that it will and not attract the type of bad publicity that it has attracted in the past. I also feel that the various programs can be improved upon. It's not as though we have any templates that we can use as perfect models. We ourselves, we need to look at what we're offering, and we need to measure that against the principles of transparency, good governance, anti-corruption, and the things that our people deserve, because our people deserve good governance. And so my position is, governments in the Caribbean, we owe a special duty of care to our people. And once we exercise that duty of care and we manage our affairs in a way that we understand that we operate within a very complex and a very difficult geopolitical environment, that we speak in a way that does not jeopardize the interests of our countries and our respective peoples. We speak in a way that shows that we are governed by wisdom and not by emotion.
Gentlemen, thank you so very much for appearing on this week's edition of the Bubb Report. And this was such a dense conversation that, Mr. Lovell, we did not even get to Vehicle Gate. And Mr. Fontaine, Dr. Fontaine, we did not even get to election gate in Dominica. So I promise you, gentlemen, in the new year, we will be having you back on the program. And Mr. Lovell, of course, you said off the record that you were very impressed with the level of journalism that's coming from Grenada. But I credit that. So the Bubb Report, of course, was birthed out of the death, the sad departure of one of my mentors, Mr. George Grant, who had a program Sundays with George Grant. And when he died, I took the baton really from what he was doing and the work that Callistra Faria does in Grenada as well. So we do have a wealth of journalistic talent here, I suppose. But I credit that to the mentors who mentored us. Lou Smith, George Grant, the late Leslie Pear. They were my mentors, at least. And so we have to carry on the work of good journalism, not only for Grenada, but for the Caribbean.
Very well.
Yes, yes.
You know, lovely show and lovely to talk with you, gentlemen. And, again, my apologies to Antigua. And I'm sorry for your trouble.
Well, knock on wood, Brian. Howard might be saying apologies to Grenada. Knock on wood.
Yeah. Oh, no. I have no idea that we're going to next in the firing line. Trust me. We're going to get the third people.
Yeah. Dr. Fontaine. Oh, did you find the hat, Brian?
I'm going to find it.
Gentlemen, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
To you and to my fellow panelists, Happy Holiday.
Yes, absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you for appearing on the Bubb Report this week. Of course, viewers and listeners, this was yet another edition of the Bubb Report, our very last program for the year, our very last panel segment of the year. Of course, the final episode of the Bubb Report that will be aired this year will be on December 28th, the 28th of December. And of course, that would just be a year in review program. But we want to hear from you. What was some of your most remarkable moments coming out of our programming this year? Was it the Jonathan Lacrette interview? That was one of our mostly watched interviews. Was it the conversation that we had with Trinidad and Tobago's newly appointed ambassador to CARICOM on developments with respect to U.S. military aggression against Venezuela and the U.S. military buildup and the attacks on fishing boats you've been seeing in the region? You know, those programs, we've had several of those that really attracted a lot of attention from you or audience. Was it the Bubb Report's 5th anniversary event that was held at the Grenada Trade Center in May of this year, where we had Dr. Didicus Jules as the guest speaker, really contextualizing a lot of the global development issues that currently confronts the region? Was it our interview with Prime Minister, the Honorable Deacon Mitchell, earlier in the year? What was it on the Bubb Report this year that you really had, that had an impact on what you saw? We would love to hear from you. But of course, we'd also want to know, what is it about the Bubb Report that causes you to continue to watch every Sunday, even while you prepare your lunches and you prepare for the week doing household chores and things like that? We would certainly love to hear from you in the comments about all of that. And I just have to say that, you know, the Bubb Report is something that I'm very passionate about, and my commitment to you is that that passion will continue on in 2026. We commit ourselves to maintaining the same quality programming that we have committed to doing from the inception of this program. So, of course, this program will not be possible with you, the audience. Of course, you know, without the audience, the Bubb Report will not have grown in the way that it has. So we also want to thank you for your spirited contributions every week. Sometimes when we are not live, like today we're not live, but certainly we do welcome your contributions to the program. And on behalf of my producers who really work hard every week to ensure that we bring you a quality program, I want to take this time to wish you and your families a happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, if those of you who celebrate that, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever faith tradition, whatever cultural tradition you observe at this time of year, We wish you all the very best for the holiday season, and we will be seeing you again next year for another series of Bubb Report episodes right here on Sundays from 10 to 12. Again, I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb, wishing everyone a happy holidays, and we'll see you next week again, well, next year, really, for a new round of programming on the Bubb Report. Take care. Bye-bye.